The nurse checking my blood pressure leaned close and whispered, "When the doctor comes in, say you're someone else." I started to ask why, but she cut me off. "We don't have time." At that moment, the doctor entered holding something strange. "Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from." The blood pressure cuff tightened around my arm with a familiar squeeze, but nothing else about that Tuesday morning felt familiar at all. "Mrs. Louise Pratt?" the nurse asked, her voice oddly strained. I nodded, settling back against the examination table's crinkly paper. At 63, I'd grown accustomed to these routine checkups at Riverside Medical Center, the same building where I'd brought my son for scraped knees and strep throat decades ago. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in that peculiar shade of clinical white that makes even healthy people look half dead. The nurse was new. I'd never seen her before. Young, maybe 30, with dark hair pulled back so tightly it seemed to stretch her features. Her name tag read, L. Patterson, RN. She wrapped the cuff around my arm with practiced efficiency, but her hands trembled slightly. "How are you feeling today?" she asked, her eyes darting toward the closed door. "Fine, dear. Just here for my annual physical," Dr. Morrison insisted, though I told him I feel perfectly well. I smiled, trying to ease whatever nervousness she was displaying. "First day?" "No, I've been here 2 years." She pumped the bulb, and the cuff constricted. Her eyes locked on mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. "Mrs. Pratt, I need you to listen very carefully." Before I could respond, she leaned close, so close I could smell the mint on her breath, and whispered, "When the doctor enters, say you're someone else." My heart stuttered. "I beg your pardon? We don't have time to discuss." The door swung open with such force it banged against the wall. Dr. Morrison strode in, but he wasn't alone. Behind him came my daughter-in-law, Vera, immaculately dressed as always in a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Her blonde hair was swept into an elegant twist, and her smile was the practiced one she wore for charity events and family gatherings where she needed to appear concerned. "Margaret!" Vera exclaimed, rushing forward. "How are you feeling?" The nurse's fingers pressed into my wrist, not checking my pulse, but squeezing a warning. I looked at her, saw the desperate plea in her eyes, and some instinct older than reason made me say, "I'm sorry. I think there's been some confusion. My name is Dorothy Hayes." Dr. Morrison's eyebrows shot up. He glanced at his tablet, then at me. "Mrs. Pratt, this isn't—" "Dorothy Hayes," I repeated, more firmly this time. My voice didn't waver, though my mind was spinning like a tornado. "I'm here for a consultation about my arthritis." Vera's perfectly made-up face flickered, just for a second, with something dark before the concerned expression returned. "Margaret, sweetheart, you're confused. Don't you remember? We discussed this appointment last week." "I've never met you before in my life," I said, meeting her eyes, "and I don't appreciate being called by the wrong name." The nurse stepped forward. "Dr. Morrison, I believe there's been a scheduling error. Mrs. Hayes was scheduled for this time slot. Perhaps we should check the system." Dr. Morrison looked between us, clearly bewildered. I'd been his patient for 15 years. He knew my name, my history, my deceased husband, Thomas. But something in the nurse's steady gaze made him pause. "Vera," he said carefully, "perhaps we should step outside and verify the appointment details." "But that's ridiculous. That's my mother-in-law, Louise Pratt. She lives at Willow Creek Farm on County Road 47. She's clearly having a cognitive episode, which is exactly why I brought her here today." Vera's voice rose with each word, taking on an edge of hysteria that seemed almost theatrical. "Madam," I said coldly, channeling every ounce of the schoolteacher I'd been for 30 years. "I don't know who you are, or why you're trying to claim me as a relative, but I assure you I'm quite sound of mind. I live alone at 382 Maple Drive, and I've never set foot on any farm." The lie came smoothly. Surprisingly so. I'd actually lived at Willow Creek Farm for 40 years, in the sprawling white farmhouse Thomas and I had restored together, surrounded by 60 acres of Kentucky bluegrass and oak trees that had stood for centuries. But something about this moment demanded deception, and I trusted it. Dr. Morrison cleared his throat. Let me check the system. Nurse Patterson, could you please take Mrs. He hesitated. Our patient to the waiting room while I sort this out? Of course. Nurse Patterson unstrapped the blood pressure cuff and helped me down from the table with a gentleness that felt protective. This way, ma'am. As we left, I heard Vera's voice rising. This is absurd. She's clearly experiencing dementia. She doesn't even recognize me. The moment we turned the corner into the empty hallway, Nurse Patterson's grip on my elbow tightened. Keep walking. Don't look back. Room 7B at the end of this corridor. What's happening? I whispered, my heart hammering against my ribs. Not here. She steered me quickly down the hall, past examination rooms where I could hear the muffled sounds of other patients and doctors, past a cart of supplies, past a janitor who didn't look up from his mopping. Room 7B was a small consultation room, and she pulled me inside, locking the door behind us. Sit down, she said, and her professional mask cracked, revealing genuine fear. Mrs. Pratt, I'm risking my job and possibly more by telling you this, but I can't stand by and watch it happen. Watch what happened? My hands were shaking now. I clasped them together in my lap. 3 days ago, your daughter-in-law came to the hospital. She met with Dr. Morrison and Dr. Bradley from psychiatry. She brought documentation, medical records, statements from your son, even a notarized letter allegedly from your primary care physician. All of it painted a picture of progressive dementia, dangerous behavior, and cognitive decline. The room tilted. That's impossible. I'm perfectly fine. I balance my checkbook, I drive, I volunteer at the library twice a week. I know. I saw you there last Thursday. You helped my daughter find books for her book report on the Civil War. You recommended 3 titles and discussed them knowledgeably. That's why when I saw your name on today's schedule with a notation for psychiatric evaluation and possible emergency commitment, I knew something was wrong. Emergency commitment. The words hit me like a physical blow. You mean institutionalization? She nodded, her eyes glistening. They were planning to have you declared mentally incompetent today. Dr. Morrison was supposed to conduct an evaluation, and Dr. Bradley was standing by. Your daughter-in-law brought all the paperwork already prepared. Once you were committed, even temporarily, she had documents ready to file for emergency guardianship. My mouth went dry. Guardianship. Control over my finances, my property, my very life. Willow Creek Farm, worth millions now with the development boom spreading through rural Tennessee, the farm Thomas and I had poured our souls into, the land his grandfather had homesteaded in 1889. Why would she? But I knew why. I'd always known Vera married my son Ronald for security, not love. I'd seen how her eyes lingered on the farm's value when a developer approached us last year, how she'd urged Ronald to talk sense into me about selling. And Ronald, my only child, had grown distant since their marriage 5 years ago, choosing her narrative over mine in every disagreement. There's more, Nurse Patterson said quietly. I overheard her on the phone yesterday when she didn't know I was in the supply closet. She was talking to someone about how, once the old woman is handled, the property transfer can proceed immediately. And then she said something that chilled me to the bone. Ronald doesn't need to know the details. He'll believe whatever I tell him about his mother's condition. A wave of nausea rolled through me. My own son. Was he part of this, or was he being manipulated too? Who were you supposed to say you were? I asked. Dorothy Hayes? Does that person exist? She's a real patient, scheduled for next week. I gambled that Dr. Morrison wouldn't remember her name off the top of his head. She pulled out her phone and quickly scrolled through something. But Mrs. Pratt, you need to understand how serious this is. The documents she filed are incredibly detailed. Someone helped her forge medical records, psychiatric evaluations, even incident reports claiming you've been found wandering confused, that you've had episodes of paranoia and aggression. None of that is true. I know. But it's your word against notarized documents and your son's signature. Have you had any falls recently? Any hospital visits? I thought back. I sprained my ankle 2 months ago stepping off a curb wrong. They took me to the ER for x-rays. Her expression darkened. That visit is in her documentation, but it's been reframed as a wandering episode where you became disoriented and fell. Did anyone witness what actually happened? I was alone. I'd been shopping and I just missed the curb. It was embarrassing, but perfectly ordinary. But even as I said it, I realized how easily the truth could be twisted. An elderly woman, alone, falling in a parking lot. In Vera's hands, it became evidence of cognitive decline. "What do I do?" I asked, hearing the tremor in my own voice. "First, you leave here immediately. Use the side exit by the imaging department. Your daughter-in-law is still arguing with Dr. Morrison about the mix-up, but she'll figure out what happened soon enough." She scribbled something on a prescription pad and handed it to me. "This is my personal cell phone number and the name of a lawyer. My uncle. He specializes in elder abuse and estate law. Call him today, this afternoon, if possible. Tell him everything." "Elder abuse," I repeated numbly. "That's what this is, Mrs. Pratt. Financial exploitation with the intent to illegally seize your property and assets. It's a felony." She stood, checking her watch. "You have maybe 10 minutes before she starts looking for you. Do you have your purse? Your car keys?" I nodded, clutching my handbag. Inside was my wallet, my keys to the old Subaru parked 3 rows from the entrance, and my phone. Everything I needed to escape, though the word felt melodramatic even as it fit perfectly. Go home. Lock your doors. Don't let anyone in, especially not your daughter-in-law or son, not until you've talked to the lawyer. And Mrs. Pratt? She met my eyes, and I saw the same steel there that I'd once used to face down unruly teenagers and school board members who wanted to cut arts funding. Document everything. Every phone call, every visit, every conversation. The more evidence you have, the better. She unlocked the door and peered out. "Clear. Go now. Down the hall, left at radiology, through the double doors. Your car is in lot B, right?" "Right." I stood on legs that felt like water but held steady. 63 years of living had taught me that sometimes you had to move even when you were terrified. I slipped out the door and walked as quickly as I could without running. Past radiology, where a technician was reviewing images with a patient, left at the double doors. Through the imaging department's waiting room where 3 people barely glanced up from their magazines. The October sunlight hit me like a benediction as I pushed through the exit. The parking lot stretched before me, ordinary and safe in the midday light. I found my Subaru right where I'd left it, climbed in with shaking hands, and locked all the doors. Only then did I let myself feel the full weight of what had just happened. Someone had tried to have me declared insane. My own daughter-in-law had forged documents, manipulated medical records, and conspired to steal everything Thomas and I had built. And she'd almost succeeded. I pulled out my phone to call the lawyer Nurse Patterson had recommended, but it buzzed in my hand before I could dial. A text message from Ronald. "Mom, where are you? Vera says you ran off from the doctor's office. She's worried sick. Call me immediately." My finger hovered over the reply button. How much did he know? Was he part of this? Or was he being used? Another text came through, this time from Vera herself. "Margaret, I don't know what happened, but we need to talk. You're not well, and I'm only trying to help you. Please come to the house so we can discuss this calmly." Not well. The phrase sent ice down my spine. That's how it would start. Concerned family members, worried about poor Margaret's declining health. And by the time anyone questioned it, I'd be locked away somewhere, and my farm would be sold to the highest bidder. I started the car, my hands steadier now. Anger was replacing fear, and with it came clarity. I'd spent my life teaching young people to think critically, to question, to stand up for truth. I wasn't about to roll over now. But as I pulled out of the parking lot, I caught a glimpse of Vera in my rearview mirror, bursting through the hospital's main entrance. Even from this distance, I could see the fury on her face as she scanned the parking lot. She spotted my car just as I turned onto the main road. Our eyes met for one brief second, and what I saw there confirmed every terrible suspicion. This wasn't about concern or care or family. This was about money and property and greed. And my daughter-in-law would stop at nothing to get what she wanted. The question was, what would I have to become to stop her? The 40-minute drive back to Willow Creek Farm felt like navigating through a nightmare where every familiar landmark had taken on sinister meaning. I kept checking my rearview mirror, half expecting to see Vera's silver Mercedes following me. But the country road remained empty except for a tractor hauling hay and Mrs. Henderson's pickup truck heading toward town. My phone rang 6 times during the drive. Ronald, Vera, Ronald again. I let each call go to voicemail, my stomach churning with each buzz. Finally, I switched it to silent and focused on the road, on the yellow center line that had guided me home for 4 decades. Willow Creek Farm appeared as it always did when I crested Morrison's Hill, the white farmhouse with its wraparound porch, the red barn Thomas had restored in 1998, the oak trees forming a cathedral arch over the long driveway. Home. But now I looked at it through different eyes, seeing not just the place where I'd raised my son and buried my husband, but a prize worth millions that someone was willing to destroy me to claim. I pulled up to the house and sat in the car for a moment, hands still gripping the steering wheel. The October breeze rustled through the oaks, scattering leaves across the lawn that needed raking. Everything looked peaceful, ordinary, but I knew better now. Inside, I locked every door and window on the ground floor, something I rarely bothered with during daylight. The house felt different, violated somehow, even though nothing had been disturbed. I made myself a cup of tea with trembling hands and retrieved the slip of paper Nurse Patterson had given me. Jerry Adams, attorney at law. The number had a Nashville area code. I dialed before I could lose my nerve. Webb and Associates, a professional female voice answered. Hello, I need to speak with Jerry Adams. It's urgent. My name is Louise Pratt, and I was referred by his niece, Laura Patterson. One moment, please. Classical music played for 30 seconds before a deep, measured voice came on the line. Mrs. Pratt, Laura called me from the hospital 20 minutes ago. She explained the situation. Are you somewhere safe? The kindness in his voice nearly broke my composure. I'm home. At my farm. Alone? Yes. Good. I need you to listen carefully. Based on what Laura told me, you're dealing with a sophisticated exploitation scheme. The fact that they've already filed forged medical documents means they're far along in this process. How soon can you get to Nashville? I looked at the clock on the mantel. 1:30. 2 hours, maybe less if traffic cooperates. Come to my office at 4 o'clock. Bring any financial documents you can gather quickly. Bank statements, property deeds, your will if you have one, power of attorney documents, medical records, anything that pertains to your estate or health. And Mrs. Pratt? Don't tell anyone where you're going. Not your son, not any family members. No one. You think Ronald is involved? The question hurt to ask. I think we don't know what he knows or doesn't know, and until we do, we assume nothing and trust no one. He paused. Do you have a safe place to stay tonight? Somewhere other than your home? The question chilled me. You think I'm in danger? I think that people who forge documents and attempt illegal institutionalization are capable of escalation when their plan fails. They'll realize you've become aware of the scheme, and they may act desperately. Do you have somewhere to go? My mind raced through possibilities. My sister lived in Florida. My closest friend, Patricia, had moved to Arizona last year. The only people nearby were church acquaintances and former students. No one I could burden with this insanity. I'll figure something out, I said. 4 o'clock. Suite 412, Merchants Tower downtown. Park in the public garage across the street, not the building's parking. And Mrs. Pratt? If anyone tries to stop you from leaving your property, call 911 immediately. Do you understand? Yes, I whispered. After we hung up, I sat staring at my phone. 12 missed calls now. 3 voicemails. I forced myself to listen to the first one. Mom, it's Ronald. I don't know what happened at the doctor's office, but Vera is really upset. She says you didn't recognize her and ran off. Please call me back. We're worried about you. His voice sounded genuinely concerned, but I heard something else underneath. Frustration? Impatience? Or was I imagining things now, seeing threats where there were none? The second voicemail was Vera, her voice syrupy with false concern. Margaret, sweetheart, I know you must be confused and frightened. Dr. Morrison explained that disorientation is common with your condition. Please let us help you. Ronald and I just want what's best for you. We're coming to the farm to check on you, okay? We should be there around 3. My blood turned to ice. They were coming here. I checked the time. 2 o'clock. I had 1 hour to gather what I needed and leave. I moved quickly through the house, grabbing my lockbox from the bedroom closet. Inside were the important documents: the farm's deed, my will, Thomas's death certificate, bank statements. I stuffed them into my largest purse along with my laptop, phone charger, and medications. From the kitchen drawer, I retrieved the small digital camera Thomas had given me years ago. I might need to document things. As I was coming back downstairs, I noticed something that made me stop cold. The drawer of Thomas's old desk in the study was slightly open. I never used that desk. I kept it as he'd left it, a memorial to the man who'd been my partner for 38 years. But the drawer was definitely open about an inch. Had I left it that way? I approached slowly, as if the desk might suddenly reveal something terrible. When I pulled the drawer fully open, my heart sank. Empty. The drawer that had contained Thomas's personal papers, his journals, letters, photographs from his military service, was completely empty. I frantically checked the other drawers. Also empty. Someone had been in my house. Someone had taken Thomas's belongings. But when? I tried to remember the last time I'd looked at this desk. Weeks ago? A month? I came in here so rarely, avoiding the memories it stirred up. Someone could have taken these things any time, and I'd never have known, unless they needed something specific from those papers. But what? My phone buzzed with a text from Ronald. "Mom, why aren't you answering? We're leaving now. Be there in 30 minutes. Please don't go anywhere." 30 minutes. I ran back upstairs, threw some clothes into an overnight bag, grabbed my toiletries. As I rushed through the bedroom, my eye caught on the photograph on my nightstand. Ronald at 8 years old, gap-toothed and grinning, holding up a fish he'd caught in the creek. When had that laughing boy become a man who'd signed documents to have his own mother committed? Or had he? I still didn't know for certain what Ronald knew or believed. Maybe Vera had manipulated him too. Maybe she'd shown him the forged medical reports and convinced him his mother was truly declining. I wanted desperately to believe my son wasn't capable of deliberate cruelty. I was carrying my bags to the car when I heard the sound of tires on gravel. My stomach dropped. They were early. I watched from the kitchen window as Vera's Mercedes pulled up beside my Subaru, blocking it in. Ronald emerged from the passenger side, tall and handsome in his business casual attire, so much like his father had been. Vera stepped out in her perfect suit, her face arranged in an expression of concern that didn't reach her eyes. I backed away from the window, my mind racing. The front door was locked. The back door was locked. But they had keys. Ronald had keys to this house. He'd had them since college. "Mom!" Ronald's voice called out, followed by the sound of a key in the lock. "Mom, we're here. Please don't be scared." I grabbed my purse with the documents and my overnight bag and moved quickly toward the mudroom. There was a door there that led to the old root cellar, and from the cellar, a storm exit that opened into the backyard. Thomas and I had used it maybe 3 times in 40 years. But the hinges were oiled. I'd made sure of that after a tornado warning last spring. "Margaret," Vera's voice now, high and sweet and false. "We just want to talk to you, sweetheart. Dr. Morrison is very concerned." I descended the steep wooden steps into the cellar, pulling the door shut behind me as quietly as I could. The space smelled of earth and old preserves. Shelves lined with dusty mason jars cast strange shadows in the light filtering through the storm doors. I heard footsteps above me. "She's not in the living room. Check upstairs." "Her car's still here," Ronald said. "She has to be somewhere in the house." I climbed the steps to the storm doors and pushed. They resisted, swollen from last week's rain, but I put my shoulder into it and they gave way with a groan that seemed deafening. I crawled out into the backyard, pulling my bags after me. The barn was 50 yards away, and beyond it, the old service road that led to the back section of the property. If I could reach my neighbor's fence line, I could cut through Peterson's Christmas tree farm to the county road and flag down a car. I ran in a crouch, feeling ridiculous and terrified in equal measure. A 63-year-old woman sneaking through her own backyard like a fugitive. But I heard the front door open again, heard Vera's sharp voice. "Ronald, go check the barn. I'll search the upstairs." I made it to the barn and slipped inside through the side door, pressing myself against the wall. The familiar smell of hay and wood and motor oil usually comforted me, but now my heart hammered so hard I thought they must be able to hear it across the yard. Through a gap in the barn boards, I watched Ronald approach. My son. My baby. He looked troubled, running his hand through his hair the way he did when stressed. At the barn door, he paused. "Mom, if you're in there, please come out. Nobody's trying to hurt you." Vera showed me the medical reports. "You've been having episodes, forgetting things, getting confused. We just want to help you get the treatment you need." Medical reports. So he'd seen the forgeries. He believed them. "I know it's scary to admit you need help," he continued, his voice softer now, "but ignoring it won't make it better. Dad would want us to take care of you." The invocation of Thomas's name felt like a slap. How dare he use his father's memory to justify this? Ronald stepped into the barn, and I held my breath. He walked slowly between the old tractor and the workbench where Thomas's tools still hung in precise order. If he looked to his left, he'd see me pressed against the wall beside the door. But his phone rang, Vera's ringtone. "Yeah? No, she's not in the barn. Are you sure? Okay, I'm coming back." He left, and I counted to 30 before moving. Through the barn's back window, I could see both of them standing by the house now, Vera gesturing animatedly, Ronald shaking his head. They were arguing about something. This was my chance. I slipped out the back of the barn and ran for the fence line. The overnight bag banged against my hip, and my purse strap cut into my shoulder, but I didn't stop until I reached the split-rail fence that marked the property boundary. I climbed over it with none of the grace I'd had at 30, nearly falling into Peterson's neatly planted rows of Fraser firs. From here, I couldn't see the house or the barn. The young trees provided cover as I worked my way toward the county road. My phone buzzed in my purse. More calls, more texts. But I ignored them. It took 15 minutes to reach the road, and another 5 before a car appeared. I stood on the shoulder waving my arms, and a young woman in a Honda pulled over, concern evident on her face. "Ma'am, are you okay? Do you need me to call someone?" "I need a ride to town," I said, trying not to sound as desperate as I felt. "My car broke down at my farm back there, and my phone's dead. Could you possibly take me to the public library? I can call my mechanic from there." The lie came easily, too easily, but I saw the hesitation in her eyes, the calculation of whether I was safe or dangerous or crazy. "Please," I added. "I'm a retired school teacher. I taught here for 30 years. I just need to get to town." Something in my voice must have convinced her. "Get in. The library's on my way." As we pulled away, I looked back toward the farm. Somewhere beyond those trees, Ronald and Vera were searching for me, probably calling hospitals and police stations, painting me as a confused elderly woman who'd wandered off. The young woman chatted pleasantly about the weather and her college classes as we drove. I made appropriate sounds of interest, but my mind was elsewhere. I needed to get to Nashville, to Jerry Adams's office, to safety. But one thought kept circling back, dark and terrible. The empty drawers in Thomas's desk. Someone had taken his personal papers weeks or even months ago. They'd been planning this for longer than I'd realized. And whatever was in those papers, it was important enough to steal. What had Thomas known? What had he kept hidden that now, 5 years after his death, someone desperately needed to remain buried? As we entered town, passing the familiar storefronts and the church where I'd attended services for decades, I realized with sickening clarity that this was about more than just the farm's monetary value. This was about a secret, and someone was willing to destroy me to keep it hidden. The young woman dropped me at the library at 2:45, giving me just enough time to catch the 3 o'clock bus to Nashville. I thanked her profusely and watched her drive away before pulling out my phone. 23 missed calls, 14 text messages, 2 voicemails from numbers I didn't recognize. I silenced it completely and walked to the bus station 3 blocks away, keeping my head down and moving quickly. The small town that had been my home for 4 decades suddenly felt hostile, as if every passing car might contain someone looking for me. The bus arrived on time, half empty with afternoon commuters and students. I took a seat near the back and kept my face turned toward the window, watching the Tennessee countryside roll past. Fields of soybeans turning gold in the autumn sun. Red barns and white churches. The landscape of my entire adult life, now feeling like foreign territory. My mind kept returning to those empty drawers. Thomas had been meticulous about his records, keeping everything organized in labeled folders. What could have been in those papers that someone needed badly enough to risk breaking into my home? The bus pulled into Nashville's Central Station at 4:20. I'd be late to Jerry Adams's office, but not terribly so. I flagged down a taxi, something I rarely did, but I didn't trust using a rideshare app that would leave a digital trail. Merchants Tower rose 30 stories above downtown, all glass and steel modernity. I took the elevator to the 4th floor, my overnight bag feeling heavier with each passing second. Suite 412 had a frosted glass door with gold lettering, Adams and Associates, attorneys at law. The receptionist, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, looked up as I entered. "Mrs. Pratt?" "Yes, I'm sorry I'm late. The bus—" "Mr. Adams is expecting you. Right this way." Jerry Adams's office was lined with law books and framed certificates. He stood as I entered, a tall black man in his 60s with silver-streaked hair and an air of quiet authority that immediately put me at ease. His handshake was firm and warm. "Mrs. Pratt, please sit. Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee?" "Water would be wonderful, thank you." As his receptionist brought in a bottle of water, Jerry settled behind his desk and opened a yellow legal pad. "Laura gave me the basics, but I need to hear everything from you, starting from the beginning. Don't leave anything out, even if it seems insignificant." I told him everything. The nurse's warning, the forged medical documents, Vera's phone call about property transfer, my escape from the farm. When I mentioned the stolen papers from Thomas's desk, his pen paused mid-note. "You're certain they were taken recently?" "I don't know exactly when. I avoid that desk. Too many memories. But they were there 6 months ago when I was looking for Thomas's military discharge papers for a VA benefit question. The drawer was full then." "And now completely empty?" "Completely." He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled under his chin. "Mrs. Pratt, I'm going to be direct with you. What you're describing is sophisticated and premeditated. The forged medical documents alone require either substantial money to pay professionals or inside access to medical record systems. The timing suggests they've been planning this for months, possibly longer. But why Thomas's papers? He died 5 years ago. What could be in there that matters now? That's the question we need to answer." He pulled out a form. "First things first. I need you to sign this retainer agreement. My fee is $250 an hour, but given the urgency and Laura's recommendation, I'm prepared to work on this case for a flat rate of $5,000 to start. Can you manage that?" $5,000. A substantial amount, but I had it in my savings. "Yes." "Good. Second, I need copies of everything you brought. My assistant will scan them while we talk." He pressed a button on his intercom. "Jennifer, could you come in, please?" While Jennifer efficiently scanned my documents, Jerry asked more questions. About Ronald's relationship with Vera. About the farm's value. I estimated $3 to $4 million given recent development in the area. About my health. Excellent. With just the usual minor issues of aging. About my finances. Comfortable. With Thomas's pension, my teacher's retirement, and savings. "You mentioned a developer approached you about the property last year," Jerry said. "Tell me about that." "A company called Horizon Development. They wanted to buy the farm for a residential subdivision. They offered $2 million, which I refused. The farm has been in Thomas's family since 1889. I'd never sell it to be bulldozed." "How did Vera react to your refusal?" I remembered the dinner after I'd turned down the offer. She was furious, though she tried to hide it. She said I was being sentimental and foolish, that the money could set up Ronald and any future grandchildren for life. Ronald agreed with her, said I was getting older, and the property was too much for me to maintain. We had a terrible argument. Did Ronald ever mention anything about financial troubles? Debts? The question caught me off guard. No. He's a pharmaceutical sales representative. Makes good money? Or so I thought. Why? Jerry pulled up something on his computer screen and turned it to face me. Because while you were en route, I had my investigator run a preliminary background check on your daughter-in-law. Vera Chambers, that's her maiden name, has some interesting history. The screen showed a series of documents, credit reports, court filings, news articles. Vera filed for bankruptcy 7 years ago, 2 years before she married your son. She had over $200,000 in credit card debt from what appears to be a shopping addiction. The bankruptcy was discharged, but look at this. He pointed to a more recent document. Credit cards opened in the last 5 years, all in joint names with Ronald. Combined balance, $350,000. My hand flew to my mouth. That's impossible. I'm afraid it's not. And here's where it gets more interesting. He pulled up another document. 3 months ago, someone, we're assuming Ronald or Vera, took out a substantial loan using your farm as collateral. The room tilted. They can't do that. I never signed anything. No, but someone forged your signature. The loan was for $1.5 million from a private lending company that, frankly, operates in a legal gray area. The interest rate is criminal, 18%, and the first payment came due 2 weeks ago. It wasn't made. My vision blurred. They forged my signature on a loan? That's fraud. Serious fraud. But here's the problem. Proving forgery requires handwriting analysis and often criminal prosecution, which takes time. In the meantime, the lender can foreclose. And guess who's listed as the backup beneficiary if something happens to you? Ronald, I whispered. Exactly. If you were declared incompetent and Vera gained guardianship, or if you were institutionalized long-term, or, he paused delicately, if you passed away, Ronald would inherit. And with you out of the way, there'd be no one to contest the loan's legitimacy. They could sell the property, pay off the debt, and pocket the remainder. The water bottle in my hand trembled. My son did this? Ronald signed off on forging my signature? We don't know what Ronald knows or doesn't know. It's possible Vera forged both signatures. It's possible she's manipulated him into believing you're actually ill and this is necessary. Or, he trailed off, the implication hanging heavy in the air. Or Ronald was complicit. Or my son had chosen his wife's greed over his mother's well-being. Or the boy I'd raised, the child I'd loved and sacrificed for, had become someone I didn't recognize. There's more, Jerry said gently. The investigator found something else. Vera was married before, 15 years ago. Her husband was a man named Gerald Pritchard, 68 years old at the time. He died 6 months into their marriage. Died how? Heart attack, according to the death certificate. But Gerald's daughter from his first marriage contested the will. She claimed Vera had isolated her father from his family, convinced him to change his will in her favor, and may have contributed to his death by withholding his heart medication. The case was settled out of court, but the daughter's attorney included a sworn affidavit alleging elder abuse and financial exploitation. Ice flooded my veins. She's done this before. The charges were never proven, and the settlement included a non-disclosure agreement. But yes, there's a pattern here. Vera targets vulnerable people, gains their trust or marries into their family, manipulates situations to her financial advantage, and eliminates obstacles. I need to call Ronald, I said, reaching for my phone. I need to tell him what she is, what she's doing. No. Jerry's voice was sharp. Mrs. Pratt, think. If you call Ronald now, what will happen? Either he already knows everything, in which case you've warned them that you're aware of the scheme, or he doesn't know, and Vera will convince him you're having paranoid delusions, which is exactly what her forged medical documents claim. Either way, you lose. Then what do I do? Just hide while she destroys everything? No, we build a case, we document everything, and we prepare for the confrontation that's coming. He pulled out his phone. First, I'm calling a colleague who specializes in emergency restraining orders. We need to prevent them from accessing your property or accounts. Second, we need you somewhere safe tonight. Do you have any friends or family they wouldn't think to look for you? I thought desperately. Then it came to me. My former principal, Helen Garrett. She retired 8 years ago and moved to Franklin. Ronald doesn't know her well. He was already in college when I started working under her. And she lives in a retirement community with security. Call her. Don't tell her everything. Just say you need a place to stay for a few days due to some family complications. The less people know, the safer everyone is. I dialed Helen's number with shaking fingers. She answered on the second ring, her voice as brisk and efficient as it had been when she ran Harrison High School. Margaret, what a lovely surprise. How are you? Helen, I hate to impose, but I'm in a difficult situation. Could I possibly stay with you for a few nights? I'd explain everything in person, but I really need somewhere away from the farm. To her credit, Helen didn't pepper me with questions. Of course, come whenever you're ready. You remember my address? I'll GPS it. Thank you so much. After I hung up, Jerry handed me a business card. This is my personal cell phone. Call me immediately if anything happens. Any threats, any contact from Ronald or Vera, anything at all. I'm filing the restraining order paperwork tonight, and tomorrow morning we'll go to the police and file a fraud report about the forged loan documents. Will that be enough to stop them? His expression was grave. Honestly, I don't know. They've already committed multiple felonies. People who've gone this far don't usually stop just because legal obstacles appear. They escalate. He paused. Mrs. Pratt, I need you to understand something. You're in danger. Real, physical danger. Vera has a history of being involved in suspicious deaths. And right now, you're the only thing standing between her and several $1 million. You think she'd actually try to hurt me? I think that when people get desperate, they're capable of terrible things. And you escaping today made them very desperate. As I left his office with Jennifer's escort to the elevator, my phone buzzed. Against my better judgment, I looked at the screen. A text from an unknown number. Margaret, we need to talk. This is getting out of hand. Meet me at Morrison's Diner tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Come alone. Don't involve lawyers or police. This concerns your late husband. And there are things you need to know about Thomas before you make accusations you'll regret. Art? My hand clenched around the phone. Things I need to know about Thomas? What did Ronald, or Vera, know about my deceased husband that I didn't? Jennifer noticed my expression. Mrs. Pratt, are you all right? I don't know, I said honestly. I really don't know. Because now, in addition to everything else, I had to wonder. What secrets had Thomas kept from me? And were they worth killing for? Helen Garrett's apartment in the Magnolia Springs retirement community was exactly what I expected. Tastefully decorated with books lining every wall and photographs from her 40 years in education. She welcomed me with a hug and a cup of chamomile tea, asking no questions until I was ready to talk. I told her some of it. Not everything. Not the stolen papers or Vera's history of suspicious deaths. But enough about the forgery and the attempted institutionalization that her expression shifted from concern to fury. That woman should be in prison, Helen declared, her former principal's voice emerging. And Ronald. I can't believe he'd allow this to happen to his own mother. I don't know what he knows, I said, the words tasting bitter. Part of me hopes he's being manipulated. The other part knows that ignorance at a certain point becomes complicity. Helen squeezed my hand. You stay here as long as you need. The security gate won't let anyone up without my permission, and I've got your back. That night, I barely slept. Every sound in the unfamiliar apartment made me startle awake. At 3 a.m, I gave up and opened my laptop, staring at that text message from Ronald. Meet me at Morrison's Diner. This concerns your late husband. What could Thomas possibly have to do with any of this? He'd been a simple man, a farmer, a veteran, a devoted husband and father. He'd kept the farm running, coached Ronald's Little League team, served on the church council. What secrets could a man like that have? But then I remembered those empty drawers. Someone had wanted those papers badly enough to steal them. Someone knew something about Thomas that I didn't. At 6:30, I made a decision. I would go to the diner. But I wouldn't go unprepared or alone. I called Jerry Adams' cell phone, hoping he was an early riser. He answered on the first ring, sounding fully awake. Mrs. Pratt, I was about to call you. We have a problem. My stomach dropped. What kind of problem? Ronald filed a missing persons report last night. He told the sheriff's department you have dementia and wandered away from the farm in a confused state. He provided them with copies of the forged medical documents. There's now an active search for you. Can't you tell them it's false? Show them the fraud? I've already contacted the sheriff, but here's the issue. Those medical documents look legitimate. They have Dr. Morrison's signature, also forged, we're assuming, and they're on official hospital letterhead. Until we can prove they're fraudulent, which requires forensic analysis that takes time, the police have to treat Ronald's report as legitimate. They think they're looking for a vulnerable elderly woman who might be in danger. So I'm what? A fugitive? You're a missing person. If the police find you, they'll likely take you into protective custody and contact Ronald as your next of kin. At that point, he could push for an emergency psychiatric hold. I closed my eyes. He sent me a text last night. Wants to meet at Morrison's diner this morning. Says it's about Thomas. Silence on the other end. Then, it's a trap. I know. But Jerry, what if he really does know something about Thomas? Something that explains why someone stole those papers? Then he can tell it to a judge. Mrs. Pratt, you cannot meet with him alone. That's exactly what they want. I won't go alone. I want you there, hidden, and I want to record the conversation. Another pause. Tennessee is a one-party consent state for recording. You can legally record any conversation you're part of without the other person's knowledge. But if this goes wrong, it's already gone wrong. At least this way. Maybe I'll get some answers. He sighed. All right. Morrison's diner, you said? 8 o'clock? Yes. I'll be there at 7:30. I'll sit somewhere with a clear view of your booth. You'll wear this. He gave me an address. There's a store that opens at 7. Buy a small recording device. They'll know what you need. Keep it in your purse and make sure it's running before you enter the diner. After we hung up, I sat in Helen's guest room and tried to prepare myself for seeing Ronald. My son, the child I'd rocked through nightmares and nursed through chickenpox. The boy who'd cried at his father's funeral and promised to take care of me. When had we lost each other? At 7 o'clock, I drove Helen's car, she'd insisted I borrow it, to the electronics store Jerry had recommended. The young clerk sold me a digital voice recorder no bigger than a pack of gum and showed me how to use it. I practiced in the parking lot until I was confident. Morrison's diner sat on the edge of town, a chrome and vinyl relic from the 1950s that served the best biscuits and gravy in the county. I arrived at 7:55 and sat in the parking lot, watching. Jerry's car was already there. I'd memorized the make and model. Through the window, I could see him in a corner booth, apparently absorbed in his newspaper. At exactly 8 o'clock, Ronald's Lexus pulled in. He got out alone, no Vera, and my heart lurched. He looked tired, with shadows under his eyes and wrinkles in his shirt. For a moment, he was just my son again, and I wanted nothing more than to hug him and have everything be okay. But then I remembered the forged loan documents, the missing persons report, the conspiracy to have me institutionalized. I checked that the recorder was running, took a deep breath, and walked into the diner. Ronald saw me immediately and stood. Mom, thank God. I slid into the booth across from him, keeping my purse close. You said this was about Thomas. He blinked at my cold tone. Mom, first I need to know you're okay. You've been missing for almost 24 hours. Vera and I have been worried sick. Save it, Ronald. I know about the forged medical documents. I know about the loan against my property. I know about Vera's history with her previous husband. His face went pale. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. It doesn't suit you. Now tell me what this meeting is really about or I'm leaving. He glanced around the diner nervously. The morning crowd was thin. An elderly couple, a construction worker at the counter, Jerry in his corner booth. No one paying attention to us. Mom, listen to me. You don't understand what's happening here. Dad, he stopped, struggling with something. Dad wasn't who you thought he was. My fingers tightened on my coffee cup. Explain. Do you know why he never let anyone go through his papers? Why he kept that desk locked? It was his private space. I respected that. It was because he had another family. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? Before he met you, Dad was married. He had a wife and a daughter. The marriage fell apart. I don't know all the details. But he left them. Changed his name, started over. You knew him as Thomas Pratt. but his real name was Thomas Franklin. I couldn't breathe. That's impossible. I knew everything about Thomas. His military service, his family history, his fabricated history. Mom, I found out 6 months ago. I was going through some old files for Dad's VA benefits when I found the original documents. Marriage certificate to a woman named Carol Franklin. Birth certificate for a daughter named Rachel. Divorce papers that were never finalized because Dad just disappeared. The diner seemed to spin around me. Why wouldn't he tell me? I don't know. Maybe he was ashamed. Maybe he thought you wouldn't marry him if you knew. But Mom, it gets worse. Ronald leaned forward, his voice dropping. That daughter, Rachel Franklin, she's been looking for him for years. She hired private investigators, and 3 months ago she found out he was dead and that you inherited everything. So what? She has no legal claim. We were married for 38 years, but they never legally divorced. Which means technically Dad's first marriage might still be valid, which would make your marriage— He couldn't finish the sentence. Bigamy, I whispered. You're saying my marriage was illegal. I'm saying it's complicated. And Rachel Franklin has filed a lawsuit claiming she's Dad's legitimate heir and that you have no legal right to the property or estate. Her lawyers are vicious, Mom. They're going to drag Dad's name through the mud. And yours too. My mind reeled. Thomas? A bigamist? A man who'd abandoned a wife and child? It couldn't be true. But even as I rejected it, pieces began clicking into place. His reluctance to talk about his past before we met. The locked desk. His insistence on keeping certain documents private. The way he'd always paid cash for everything, avoiding paper trails. The papers from his desk, I said slowly. Did you take them? Ronald had the grace to look guilty. Vera and I took them about 2 months ago. We were trying to figure out how bad this was, how much exposure you had. We found letters from Rachel's lawyers, documents Dad had hidden, evidence that he knew she was looking for him. And instead of telling me, you decided to what? Forge loan documents? Try to have me committed? No. God, no. Mom, I didn't know about any of that. The loan, the medical documents, that's all Vera. When I found out about Dad's past, I told her, and she said she'd help me protect you. She said we needed to sell the farm quickly before Rachel's lawsuit went public, because once it did, the property value would tank. She said she knew people who could expedite things. By forging my signature? I didn't know she was going to do that. His voice rose, drawing glances from the other diners. He lowered it again. I swear, Mom, I thought she was just talking to real estate agents, preparing for when you agreed to sell. I didn't know about the loan until yesterday when the lender called me because the payment was late. And the medical documents? The attempted institutionalization? His eyes filled with tears. She told me you were having episodes. She showed me reports from Dr. Morrison about confusion and memory loss. She said you'd been wandering around the farm at night, forgetting where you were. She convinced me you needed help. And you believed her instead of asking me directly. Because Dad's secrets made me question everything. The anguish in his voice was real. If Dad could lie to you for 40 years, if your whole marriage was built on deception, then what else wasn't real? Vera kept saying you were in denial, that you couldn't face the truth about Dad, that it was causing psychological breaks. I wanted to believe him. Everything in me wanted to believe my son was a victim of manipulation rather than a co-conspirator. But trust, once broken, is hard to restore. Where's Vera now? I asked. At the farm. She wanted to come with me, but I told her I needed to talk to you alone. Because you still have some shred of decency left, or because she told you to gain my trust? He flinched. You really think I'm that far gone? I think you signed papers that gave your wife access to my estate. I think you filed a missing persons report that painted me as senile. I think whatever you believed about your intentions, your actions have been clear. Ronald buried his face in his hands. I've ruined everything, haven't I? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A text from Jerry. Check local news. Now. I pulled up the news website on my phone. The headline made my blood run cold. Local woman wanted in connection with financial fraud. Louise Pratt, 63, is being sought by authorities after allegedly stealing $50,000 from church donation fund. Pratt, who suffers from dementia, may be confused and dangerous. What is this? I shoved the phone across the table to Ronald. I never touched the church funds. I haven't been treasurer for 3 years. Ronald read it, his face going from confused to horrified. Oh no, oh God. This is Vera. This has to be… He grabbed his own phone and started typing frantically. What are you doing? Calling the church. They need to know this is false. He stopped, staring at his screen. They're not answering. Mom, it's Tuesday morning. Someone should be in the office. A terrible understanding dawned on me. She's setting me up. First the institutionalization attempt, now criminal charges. If I'm arrested, if I'm in jail, she gets everything. Ronald's voice was hollow. She plays the concerned daughter-in-law, takes control of your affairs, sells the property to pay the stolen money back, and pockets the rest. My phone buzzed again. Jerry, leave now. Police dispatch just put out a bolo for your vehicle. They're looking for Helen's car. I stood up. I have to go. Mom, wait. Ronald reached for my arm, but I pulled away. Did you know about this? The false theft charges? No. I swear on Dad's grave. He stopped. On whatever grave he actually deserves. Mom, please, let me help you. You want to help? Go to the police and tell them everything. Tell them about Vera's manipulation, the forged documents, all of it. Testify against her. She's my wife, and I'm your mother. I looked at him, this man I'd raised, and saw a stranger. Choose, Ronald. Right now. Choose who you are. I walked out of the diner without looking back. Jerry was already in his car, engine running. He pulled up beside me. Get in. Helen's car is compromised. We need to move fast. As I climbed into his passenger seat, I saw Ronald stumble out of the diner behind me, phone pressed to his ear, his face a mask of devastation. Where are we going? I asked. Somewhere they won't think to look. And Mrs. Pratt? Whatever happens next, it's about to get much worse. Vera just declared war. He wasn't exaggerating. My phone lit up with alerts. A warrant had been issued for my arrest. The local news was running my photograph with the caption, "Armed and Dangerous." Armed and dangerous. A 63-year-old retired school teacher who'd never even gotten a speeding ticket. Jerry, I said quietly, tell me the truth. Can we win this? He didn't answer right away, which was answer enough. We can try, he finally said. But Mrs. Pratt, you need to understand. Vera has outplayed us at every turn. She's 3 steps ahead, and she's ruthless. Whatever secrets Thomas kept, whatever legal tangles your marriage created, she's using them to destroy you. So what do? His jaw tightened. We stop playing defense. Tomorrow, we go on the attack. Jerry drove us to a motel 40 miles outside Nashville, the kind of place that still took cash and didn't ask questions. I paid for 3 nights under a false name while Jerry made phone calls from the parking lot, his expression growing grimmer with each conversation. When he finally came to my room, he carried a banker's box that he set on the small table. I've been busy while you were at the diner, he said. My investigator worked through the night. What we found changes everything. He pulled out a folder. First, the good news. Thomas's first marriage was legally dissolved. He didn't just disappear. He filed for divorce in 1972, and it was finalized. The records were in a different county under a slightly different name spelling, which is why Rachel Franklin's lawyers haven't found them yet. Your marriage to Thomas was completely legitimate. Relief flooded through me. So Rachel has no claim? Correct. But here's where it gets interesting. He pulled out more documents. Rachel Franklin exists, and she is Thomas's daughter from his first marriage. But she never filed any lawsuit against you. In fact, she doesn't even know Thomas is dead. I stared at him. What? The lawsuit Ronald mentioned? Fabricated. Vera created fake legal documents to convince Ronald that your estate was under attack. She used Rachel's existence, which she discovered through those stolen papers, to create an entirely fictional legal crisis. But why? Why go to such elaborate lengths? Because Ronald would never agree to defraud his own mother without a compelling reason. Vera needed him to believe he was protecting you from a legitimate threat. The fake lawsuit gave her that leverage. Jerry pulled out another document. And there's more. That loan for $1.5 million? It's real. But the lending company is owned by a shell corporation. My investigator traced it through 3 layers of ownership. Want to guess who's the ultimate beneficial owner? Vera. Her brother, technically. Same last name before she married. Chambers. They've run this scam before, in 2 other states. Create a crisis, forge documents to secure a loan, use the borrowed money to fund their lifestyle, then either force the sale of the property or wait for the victim to die so they can inherit and cover their tracks. My hands clenched into fists. She loaned herself my money using my forged signature and charged herself 18% interest, which she'll claim as income. It's actually brilliant in a sociopathic way. Even if you prove the signature was forged, she can claim it was Ronald who forged it, not her. She's insulated herself from direct liability at every turn. And the church funds? The theft charges? Jerry's expression darkened. That one's trickier. Someone did steal $50,000 from the church donation account. The current treasurer noticed it missing yesterday morning. The church's lawyer, who happens to be a friend of mine, confirmed that the withdrawals were made using online banking credentials. The IP address traces back to your home. I didn't do it. I know, but someone in your house did, using your computer. Vera has been living at the farm for the past 5 years. She had access, opportunity, and motive. The problem is proving it. I thought about my old desktop computer in the study, the one I barely used anymore since getting a laptop. Vera could have used it any time I wasn't home, but proving she did it versus me doing it while supposedly in a dementia-addled state would be nearly impossible. So what's our move? I asked. Because right now she's winning. Jerry smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Now we use the fact that she doesn't know what we know. And we set a trap. Over the next 2 hours, Jerry laid out the plan. It was risky, possibly dangerous, but it was the only way to get Vera to reveal herself. And it required something I'd been avoiding, facing my son and determining once and for all where his loyalties lay. At 3 o'clock, I called Ronald from a burner phone Jerry had purchased. Mom? Oh, thank God. Where are you? The police. I know about the warrant. Ronald, I need you to listen very carefully. I know the truth about everything. The fake lawsuit, the shell company, Vera's brother. I know she's been lying to both of us. Silence. Then, how did you... It doesn't matter. What matters is whether you're going to help me stop her or keep protecting her. Mom, I don't know what to believe anymore. Vera says you're paranoid, that the stress has made you unstable. Ronald, listen to your own words. Vera says, Me, when did you stop trusting your own judgment? When did you start letting someone else tell you what reality is? More silence. I could hear him breathing, imagined him running his hand through his hair the way he did when stressed. What do you want me to do? He finally asked. I want you to arrange a family meeting. Tomorrow evening at the farm. Tell Vera I've agreed to sign over power of attorney and sell the property, but I want to do it properly with everyone present. Tell her I'm tired of running, that I want this resolved peacefully. She'll never believe that. She'll believe it because it's what she wants to believe. She thinks she's won, Ronald. Let her think she's right. And then what? Then we show her exactly how wrong she is. After we hung up, Jerry nodded approvingly. Good. Now for the hard part. We need evidence that will hold up in court. Everything we have so far is circumstantial. We need her to incriminate herself. The recording from the diner shows that Ronald was manipulated, but not direct evidence of Vera's crimes. We need more. He pulled out a small device that looked like a pen. This is a video camera. It broadcasts to a secure cloud storage and to my phone in real time. Tomorrow at the farm, you'll wear this in your shirt pocket. No matter what happens, keep it pointed at Vera. You'll be there? I'll be parked down the road with the sheriff and a state police investigator I trust. The moment we have what we need, they'll move in. What if she gets violent? What if she has a weapon? Jerry met my eyes. That's the risk. But Mrs. Pratt, this is the only way to end this. She's backed you into a corner where you're wanted by police, branded as dangerous and mentally ill, with your entire estate in jeopardy. If we don't stop her tomorrow, you lose everything. Your freedom, your property. Possibly, your life. That night, I barely slept again. I kept thinking about Thomas, about the secrets he'd kept, the divorce he'd never mentioned, the daughter he'd left behind. Had he been running from something? Or just trying to start fresh? I'd never know now, and that hurt almost as much as the betrayal. But I also thought about the life we'd built together, the farm we'd restored, the child we'd raised, the quiet moments on the porch watching the sun set over the fields. Those memories were real, whatever else had been complicated or hidden. And I wasn't going to let Vera take them from me. The next day crawled by. Jerry reviewed the plan a dozen times, making sure I understood every step. At 5 o'clock, we drove to within a mile of the farm and stopped. The sheriff's car and an unmarked state police vehicle were already waiting. "You're sure about this?" Jerry asked one more time. I checked that the camera pen was secure in my shirt pocket, that my phone was charged and set to record audio as backup. "I'm sure." "Remember, stay calm no matter what she says. Don't let her provoke you into anger or fear. We need her to feel confident, in control. That's when people make mistakes." I drove the last mile in Helen's car. We'd retrieved it from the diner's parking lot under cover of darkness. My hands were steady on the wheel despite the adrenaline flooding my system. I'd spent my entire career managing roomfuls of hormonal teenagers. I could handle one greedy sociopath. The farm looked beautiful in the early evening light, the way it always did in autumn. Ronald's Lexus and Vera's Mercedes were already parked in the driveway. I pulled up beside them and sat for a moment, gathering my strength. Then I got out and walked to the door of my own home. Ronald opened it before I could knock. His eyes were red-rimmed, his face haggard. "Mom." "Hello, Ronald." I stepped inside, seeing Vera standing in the living room, perfectly composed in a navy dress and pearls. She looked like she was attending a garden party, not a confrontation. "Margaret!" She came forward with outstretched arms as if to hug me. I stepped back. "Let's skip the pretense, Vera. We all know why we're here." Her smile didn't waver, but something cold flickered in her eyes. "Of course. You're here to finally do the sensible thing and protect what's left of your assets before this legal situation destroys everything. The legal situation you created. Now, Margaret, I understand you're upset. You've been under tremendous stress, and at your age with your health issues." "I don't have health issues. You forged medical documents to make it appear I do." Vera laughed, a tinkling sound that was probably meant to seem indulgent. "Ronald, you see? This is exactly what I was telling you about. The paranoia, the accusations. It's heartbreaking." I turned to Ronald. "Did you do what I asked? Did you look into Rachel Franklin?" He nodded slowly. "I called the law firm supposedly representing her. They've never heard of her or any lawsuit." Vera's smile tightened. "That doesn't mean anything. There are multiple firms involved." "There are no firms because there's no lawsuit," I interrupted. "Rachel Franklin exists, but she has no claim on this estate. Thomas's first marriage was legally dissolved in 1972. You fabricated the entire crisis to manipulate Ronald into helping you steal from me. That's absurd." But her voice had lost its warmth. "Ronald, don't listen to her. She's clearly having an episode." "An episode?" I pulled out my phone and opened the folder Jerry had sent me. "Is this an episode? These documents showing the loan company is owned by your brother? Or this one, showing that you were investigated for elder abuse in connection with your first husband's death?" Vera's face went white, then red. "You have no right to investigate my personal history. You forged my signature on loan documents. You tried to have me institutionalized. You stole from a church and framed me for it. I have every right. Prove it." She stepped closer, and for the first time I saw the real Vera. Cold, calculating, dangerous. "You can't prove any of that. It's your word against mine, and you're the one with a warrant out for your arrest. You're the one who's been declared mentally incompetent. You're the one who ran away from medical care and has been hiding from authorities. Because you manufactured all of it. Did I? Or are you a confused old woman who can't accept that she's losing her grip on reality?" Vera turned to Ronald. "This is what I've been trying to tell you. She's delusional. She needs professional help, not indulgence." Ronald looked between us, clearly torn. "Vera, some of what Mom is saying, The investigator found actual documents, forged by her lawyer, obviously. They're trying to discredit me because they know I have proof of her incompetence. Vera pulled out her phone. I have recordings, Ronald. Recordings of your mother having confused episodes, talking to your father as if he were still alive, forgetting what year it is. My blood went cold. You recorded me in my own home? I recorded a woman who was clearly suffering from dementia. Yes. For her own protection, Vera held up the phone. Should I play them? Let Ronald hear how far gone you really are? Play them, I said, my voice steady despite the fear coursing through me. Let's all hear them. Vera's thumb hovered over the screen. Then she smiled. Actually, I don't think so. I don't want to embarrass you more than necessary. Let's just proceed with the paperwork. You sign over power of attorney, we sell the farm, and everyone gets what they need. You can live comfortably in a nice facility, where you can control my money and wait for me to die, where you can receive proper care. Her voice rose, the mask slipping further. You ungrateful woman. Do you know how much I've done for you? How much I've sacrificed? This farm should have been sold years ago. It's wasted on you, sitting here alone like some tragic widow, clinging to memories of a man who lied to you for 40 years. So you decided to steal it instead. I decided to save it. To save Ronald from having to watch his mother deteriorate. To save this family from financial ruin when your medical bills pile up. She was shouting now, all pretense of concern gone. You think you're so smart, but you're just a foolish old woman who doesn't know when she's beaten. I know exactly when I'm beaten, I said quietly. And this isn't it. I looked at Ronald. You've heard her. You've seen who she really is. Now choose. Ronald's face was a mask of devastation, but when he spoke, his voice was clear. Vera, I want you to leave. What? Get out of this house. Get away from my mother. We're done. Vera laughed, but it was brittle now. You can't be serious. Ronald, everything I did was for us, for our future. You forged documents. You tried to institutionalize my mother. You stole from a church. Ronald's voice broke. How could you think I'd be okay with any of that? Because you're weak. The words exploded from her. You've always been weak. You would never have had the courage to secure what should be ours. I did what you were too spineless to do. Secure what should be ours, I repeated. This farm was never yours, Vera. It was never going to be yours. It will be when you're locked away in a psychiatric facility. Or better yet, she stopped herself, but not quickly enough. Or better yet what? I pressed. When I'm dead. You can't prove anything. But her voice was panicked now. You're just a confused old woman with paranoid delusions. Am I? I pulled the camera pen from my pocket and held it up. Because this device has been recording everything you've said for the past 15 minutes. Every threat, every admission, every moment of your mask slipping. Vera's face went from red to white. That's illegal. It's completely legal in Tennessee. One-party consent. I walked to the window and gestured. Down the road, I could see the flashing lights approaching. And those police officers who are about to arrive have been listening to every word you've said. The color drained from Vera's face completely. She lunged for my phone, but Ronald caught her arm. Don't, he said. And there was steel in his voice I'd never heard before. It's over, Vera. She wrenched free and ran for the door, but it opened before she reached it. Sheriff Dawson stood there, Jerry beside him, with 2 state police officers behind them. Vera Chambers, Sheriff Dawson said, you're under arrest for fraud, forgery, attempted financial exploitation of an elderly person, and theft. You have the right to remain silent. As they led her away in handcuffs, she screamed at Ronald. You'll regret this. You're giving up millions. Millions! For what? For her? For what's right, Ronald said quietly. After she was gone, the house fell silent except for the sound of Ronald crying. I went to him, my son, and held him the way I had when he was small and the world had hurt him. I'm sorry, he sobbed. I'm so sorry, Mom. I should have known. I should have trusted you. Hush, I said, stroking his hair. You're here now. That's what matters. Jerry approached us, professional but with warmth in his eyes. Mrs. Pratt, we have enough evidence to prosecute Vera on multiple felonies. The church theft, the forged signatures, the identity fraud. She's looking at serious prison time, and we can get the false charges against you dropped immediately. And the farm? It's yours. It always was. The fraudulent loan will be invalidated, and any claims against the property will be dismissed. He paused. You won, Mrs. Pratt. You beat her. I looked around my home, the place Thomas and I had built, the legacy we'd created. It would stay in the family. It would endure. No, I said. We all won. Truth won. 3 weeks later, I stood on the porch of Willow Creek Farm, watching the sun rise over the fields. The October air had given way to November's chill, and frost sparkled on the grass like scattered diamonds. Everything looked the same as it always had, yet everything felt different. The legal proceedings had moved with surprising speed once the evidence was presented. Vera faced 14 felony counts, including fraud, forgery, identity theft, and elder abuse. Her brother, implicated in the loan scheme, had been arrested in Arizona. The church had dropped all charges against me once forensic analysis of my computer proved that someone else, Vera, had accessed the accounts using stolen credentials. The warrant for my arrest had been rescinded, and the false medical documents had been formally retracted by the hospital after Dr. Morrison discovered his signature had been forged. My name was clear. My property was secure. I had won. But victory, I'd learned, often tastes more bitter than sweet. The screen door creaked behind me, and Ronald emerged carrying 2 mugs of coffee. He'd been staying at the farm for the past 2 weeks, sleeping in his old bedroom, helping me sort through the aftermath. We moved around each other carefully, like strangers learning to share space, rebuilding trust, one small gesture at a time. Thought you might need this, he said, handing me a mug. Thank you. I wrapped my hands around the warmth. You're up early. Couldn't sleep. He leaned against the porch railing, staring out at the same view I'd been contemplating. I keep thinking about all the signs I missed, all the times I chose to believe her instead of questioning what I was seeing. We'd had versions of this conversation multiple times over the past weeks. Ronald's guilt was a living thing between us, something he carried like a physical weight. Part of me wanted to absolve him completely, to say it wasn't his fault. But the larger part, the part that had raised him to be accountable, knew he needed to carry some of that weight, not as punishment, but as growth. You loved her, I said. Love makes us vulnerable to manipulation. That's not weakness, Ronald. That's being human. But I'm your son. I should have trusted you over her. Always. Yes, I agreed simply. You should have. He flinched, but I saw something in his expression shift. Acceptance, maybe, or the beginning of it. Truth sometimes hurts more than comfort, but it heals cleaner. Jerry called yesterday, Ronald said after a moment. Vera's lawyer is trying to negotiate a plea deal. 7 years instead of 12. What did he recommend? He said it's up to us. The DA will defer to our wishes since we're the victims. Ronald looked at me. What do you think? I sipped my coffee, considering. Vengeance would be easy. I could demand the maximum sentence, could take satisfaction in knowing Vera would spend years behind bars. But would that heal anything? Would it repair what had been broken? I think 7 years is sufficient, I said finally. She'll be in her mid-40s when she's released. Still young enough to build a different life if she chooses. Old enough to understand consequences. Ronald nodded slowly. You're more merciful than I am. I want her to rot. Because you're angry at yourself and projecting it onto her. I turned to face him. Ronald, Vera made her own choices. She chose greed over integrity, manipulation over honesty. Those were her decisions. But you also made choices, to trust without verifying, to accept easy explanations instead of asking hard questions, to prioritize your marriage over your relationship with me. Those were your choices. Own them, learn from them, but don't confuse the two. His eyes welled with tears. I don't know how to make this right. You start by being honest, with yourself, with me, with whatever comes next. I set down my coffee and took his hand. And you accept that some things can't be made right immediately. They take time. Trust takes time. Do you trust me now? I considered lying, offering him the comfort of false reassurance. But we'd had enough lies. I'm working toward it. Ask me again in 6 months. He nodded, accepting the boundary I'd drawn. That, more than anything else, gave me hope. Later that morning, Jerry Adams arrived with a thick folder of documents. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Thomas and I had paid bills, where Ronald had done homework, where our family had shared countless meals. Now it became the place where we settled accounts. First order of business, Jerry said, spreading papers before us. The fraudulent loan has been officially voided. The property title is clear. Second, we've recovered about 40% of the stolen church funds from Vera's accounts. The church has agreed not to pursue the remainder, given the circumstances. I'll make up the difference, Ronald said immediately. It's my responsibility. I started to argue, but Jerry held up his hand. Actually, that's already been discussed. The church board met last week and agreed that Ronald should contribute to a restitution fund over time, not immediately. They don't want to financially devastate him. They want accountability and growth. How much? Ronald asked. $500 a month for 24 months. $12,000 total, which covers the shortfall and acknowledges your role in enabling Vera's access to your mother's life. Ronald swallowed hard but nodded. That's fair. Third item, Jerry continued. The matter of Rachel Franklin. Mrs. Pratt, I took the liberty of locating Thomas's daughter. She lives in Oregon now, married with 2 grown children of her own. She never knew her father died. I've prepared a letter explaining the situation and offering to facilitate contact if you're willing. My chest tightened. Thomas's other daughter, the child he'd left behind, who'd grown up without him while Ronald and I had his complete attention and love. The unfairness of it struck me anew. What does she know about Thomas? I asked. Very little. Her mother told her that Thomas was young and scared when she was born, that he left when she was 3, and that they never heard from him again. She's not bitter, or at least, her response to my initial contact didn't suggest bitterness. She's curious. I thought about Thomas, about the man I'd known and loved. Had he been running from responsibility? Or had he simply been too young and overwhelmed to handle fatherhood? I'd never know his reasons now, but I could honor the complexity of his choices while not excusing them. Send the letter, I decided. And tell her she's welcome to visit if she wants to know more about her father. I'll answer any question she has honestly. Ronald looked at me in surprise. You'd do that? After everything? She's your sister, Ronald. Half-sister, but still. And she's a part of Thomas's story that we never knew existed. If she wants connection, I won't deny her that out of pride or hurt. Jerry made a note. I'll arrange it. Final item, your will and estate planning. Given recent events, I strongly recommend updating your documents to include safeguards against future exploitation attempts. We spent the next hour reviewing options, trusts, co-trustees, medical directives with multiple witnesses required. The legal machinery designed to protect vulnerable people from predators like Vera. It was depressing and necessary in equal measure. As Jerry was packing up to leave, he paused. Mrs. Pratt, I wanted to say something. In my 30 years practicing law, I've seen dozens of elder exploitation cases. Most of them end badly. The victim loses everything, or dies before justice can be served, or the family fractures beyond repair. What you did, keeping your head, gathering evidence, trusting the right people at the right time, that was remarkable. You saved yourself through intelligence and courage. That's rare. I had help, I said, thinking of Nurse Patterson, of Jerry himself, of Helen Garrett offering sanctuary without questions. You had help because you recognized who to trust and who to suspect. That's wisdom, Mrs. Pratt. That's the advantage of 63 years of living and observing and learning. He smiled. Don't discount that. Your age wasn't a weakness for Vera to exploit. It was your greatest weapon. After he left, I sat alone in the kitchen for a long time, thinking about his words. Society tells us that aging means decline, losing sharpness, losing relevance, becoming vulnerable and dependent. Vera had counted on those assumptions. She'd built her entire scheme on the idea that I was too old, too confused, too easily controlled. She'd been wrong. The doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts. I opened it to find Nurse Laura Patterson standing on the porch, looking nervous. "Mrs. Pratt, I hope it's okay that I came by. I wanted to check on you, and I brought something." She held up a small gift bag. "Laura, please come in. I've been meaning to call you and thank you properly." We sat in the living room, and she pulled out what looked like a journal from the bag. I know this might seem strange, but I kept notes during everything that happened. Not just at the hospital, but afterward. The news reports, the trial proceedings, the resolution. I thought you might want a record of it all, written from an outside perspective. I opened the journal and saw her neat handwriting chronicling the events of the past month, the warning she'd given me, the risks she'd taken, the outcome. "Why did you do it?" I asked. "You could have lost your job. You could have been sued." Laura's expression was solemn. "My grandmother died in a nursing home 3 years ago. She'd been placed there by her son-in-law against her will, declared incompetent when she was perfectly sound. By the time we figured out what was happening, she'd given up. She died 6 months later, not from illness but from heartbreak and helplessness. I promised myself I'd never stand by and watch that happen to someone else if I could prevent it." I reached across and squeezed her hand. "Your grandmother would be proud of you." "I hope so." She smiled, blinking back tears. "And I hope you know that what you did, fighting back, refusing to be victimized, that matters. That gives other people hope." After Laura left, I walked through the farmhouse slowly, room by room. This place held 40 years of memories. Thomas teaching Ronald to ride a bike in the driveway, holiday dinners with extended family, quiet evenings reading by the fireplace. But it also held new memories now. Betrayal discovered, courage found, justice achieved. The house felt different because I was different. I'd been tested in ways I'd never imagined, forced to question everything I'd believed about my son, my marriage, my own judgment. And I'd emerged not unscathed. There were scars now, places where trust had been cut away and would grow back differently, but whole. Ronald found me in Thomas's study, standing before the empty drawers that had started this entire nightmare. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About secrets," I said. "About how Thomas kept his past hidden because he was ashamed or scared or both. About how those secrets almost destroyed everything. Are you angry at him?" I considered the question honestly. No. Disappointed, maybe. Sad for the daughter he abandoned, and the full truth he never trusted me with. But Thomas was human, and humans are complicated. He made mistakes, but he also gave me 40 years of love and partnership. I can hold both truths at once. Ronald moved to stand beside me. "I found something yesterday when I was cleaning out the barn. A box of Dad's letters to you from when you were dating. I didn't read them, they're private. But I thought you might want them." He handed me a shoebox tied with faded ribbon. I opened it carefully and saw Thomas's familiar handwriting on envelope after envelope. Letters from before we were married, when he was courting me with words and promises. I pulled out one at random and read, "Margaret, you make me want to be better than I am. You see potential in me that I'm not sure exists, but I want to become the man you believe me to be. Whatever I was before, whoever I was, none of it matters as much as who I can become with you." My eyes filled with tears. He'd been telling me even then that he had a past he was leaving behind. I'd been too young and in love to hear it. "Thank you for finding these," I told Ronald. I think I needed to remember who he was trying to be, not just who he'd been. We stood together in silence for a moment, two people learning to be family again. "Mom," Ronald said quietly, "do you think you'll ever forgive me completely?" I turned to look at him, this man who'd wounded me so deeply and was working so hard to make amends. "I think forgiveness isn't a destination, Ronald. It's a practice, something we choose every day. And today, I choose it." He hugged me then, and I let him, feeling the shape of my adult son in my arms and remembering the child he'd been. People change. People grow. People make terrible mistakes, and sometimes, not always, but sometimes, they learn from them. That evening, as the sun set over Willow Creek Farm, I sat on the porch swing with a blanket and Thomas's letters. I read through our courtship, remembering the hope and possibility of those early days. The man who'd written these letters had been running from his past. Yes, but also running towards something better. He'd chosen me, chosen this life, chosen to become someone new. Maybe that's all any of us can do. Acknowledge the past without being destroyed by it. Make better choices going forward. And trust that wisdom comes not from never making mistakes, but from learning from them. I was 63 years old. Society had tried to tell me that made me vulnerable, easy to control, past my prime. Vera had believed it. Even Ronald, in his way, had believed it. But I'd learned something that age teaches and youth rarely understands. Strength isn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet and patient. Sometimes it's knowing when to trust your instincts, when to ask for help, when to gather evidence instead of confronting directly. Sometimes strength looks like an elderly woman who's lived long enough to recognize manipulation, brave enough to fight back, and wise enough to do it intelligently. The farm stretched out before me in the fading light, 60 acres of Kentucky bluegrass and oak trees, a white farmhouse with good bones, a red barn that had stood for nearly a century. This land had survived wars and depressions, storms and droughts, births and deaths. It had absorbed Thomas's secrets and weathered Vera's schemes. It would endure whatever came next. And so would I. Because I'd learned the most important lesson of all. Age isn't about what you've lost. It's about what you've learned. Every year of living had given me tools. Observation, judgment, patience, courage. Vera had counted on me being too old to fight back. She'd never considered that I might be old enough to fight smart. I smiled, thinking about the irony. All those years teaching teenagers that knowledge is power, that wisdom comes from experience, that patience and planning beat rash action. I'd lived those lessons, and in the end, they'd saved me. The porch light flickered on. Ronald, making sure I could see. He appeared in the doorway with a blanket. "Getting cold out here, Mom. You should come in a minute." I gestured to the spot beside me on the swing. "Sit with me first." He did, and we rocked gently in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. Father to son, to mother to farm, the connections that mattered, the legacy that would continue. "What happens now?" Ronald asked eventually. I thought about Rachel Franklin, who I'd soon meet, about the farm's future, whatever that might be, about the slow work of rebuilding trust and moving forward. "Now," I said, "we live. We learn. We remember that family isn't just about blood. It's about showing up, being honest, and choosing each other even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." And Willow Creek? I looked at the land that had been Thomas's inheritance and was now mine to protect and eventually pass on. The farm stays in the family. That was always the point of everything. Preserving what matters, honoring where we came from while building toward where we're going. Even after everything that's happened here, especially after everything that's happened here, this place isn't just beautiful memories, Ronald. It's also where we survived, where we fought back, where we learned what we're made of. That's legacy, too. He nodded slowly, understanding. We sat until the cold drove us inside, but I carried the peace of that moment with me, the knowledge that I'd protected what mattered most and emerged stronger for the battle. Inside, the farmhouse welcomed us with warmth and light. Home. Not perfect, not unscarred, but ours. Won through wisdom and courage, and the particular strength that comes from 63 years of living, learning, and refusing to be broken. Vera had thought my age made me weak. She'd learned too late that it made me dangerous. And that, I thought with satisfaction, was exactly as it should be. Now tell me, what would you have done if you were in my place? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to check out the video on your screen right now. I'm sure it will surprise you.